We're now moving on to the concept of area. Again, this is likely a topic that you have covered many times so far in your school career. Remember, please, that area it's a type of measurement, and it speaks about the number of units required to cover a figure. Now, if I just jump down to this rectangle we have down here, and before I even describe it, the answer is 90 meters squared. Now, I'm not talking about this exact example yet, but what I mean by area is it is basically a quantity needed to cover the interior of a figure. And what I mean is, if you could imagine 90 squares in this space, that is the area of this figure. Now, what that means is, and I'll get into this in a minute, but each of these squares is 1 meter squared. That's the area. So this covers 1 meter squared. This covers 1 meter squared, so on and so forth. And there would be 90 of those inside of this shape. And that's why the area is 90 meters squared. So think of it as, how much do you need to cover a space, or cover the interior of a figure? Some people often get confused between area and volume. Think of it as another way: if you had, let's say, a flat desk in front of you, and you wanted to cover it entirely with wrapping paper. In other words, what you need to calculate is the area of that desk. And the wrapping paper, whatever your number is, let's just say it's 100 centimeters squared, that's how much wrapping paper you would need to totally cover up that desk. Now, in this lesson, we're going to look at different types of area calculations. We're going to start off with the rectangle. Now, please keep in mind that there are formulas involved here, which will be given to you. With a rectangle, the formula is right down here: area equals length times width, or area equals base times height. It does not matter which one that you choose, but there is a procedure to filling this in. And that's now where I come to the example. So I'm going to show there. So step one, you always write down the formula. So area is length times width. Step two, fill in your values. Area equals, so this would be your length and this would be your width. This is 15 meters. I put in my units, multiplied by 6 meters. Because you can tell, from here to here is 15 meters. From here to here is 6 meters. And as we kind of alluded to earlier, that gives you a final area value of 90 meters squared. And I would typically try to box off my answer. Now, I would like to get into that a little bit more. Like, well, what the heck does that mean? Like, what is 90 meters squared? What that means is, I want you to imagine a perfect square, and I'm a terrible drawer, so this might not look that great, but here's what I mean. The area of this square is 1 meter squared. And how do I get that? That's because from here to here is 1, and from here to here is 1. 1 meter by 1 meter. If you go 1 times 1, of course, that gives you an answer of 1. So this square covers an area of 1 meter squared. Now, if I take that back into this example, our answer was 90. And what I mean by that, and I kind of drew this earlier, you have to imagine this is 1 meter squared. There are going to be 90 of those, 90 perfect squares, and each of them will be 1 meter squared in area. So there's 90 of them in total to figure out to take up the interior of this figure. So you always have to keep in mind, it's one thing to calculate it. I think many of you, you could figure out that it's 90. But the next level of this is, well, what does area actually mean? Like, if you get 90 meters, what does that mean? That means you have to think of a square, and each side of that square is 1 meter long. The area of that square works out to be 1 meter squared. To cover this shape, this rectangle, you would need 90 of those 1 meter squared pieces to cover that. If we come down here to the next one, we're going to look now as a square. And a lot of people get this, confused with the rectangle formula. And as you can see here, here's your formula. I would like to think your teachers would also allow you, if by chance you forgot, to go like this. I don't want to get into why I'm sure teachers have gone over this with you. I don't want to do it too much. But I think it's acceptable for us to use the exact same formula that we would have used for a rectangle. Area is length times width. So there's my blank formula. In this case, you can see this is my length, this is my width. It is 7 centimeters multiplied by 7 centimeters. Area equals 49 centimeters. Now, I do want to speak about here, what does this mean again? I'm going to square that off. That means I want you to think in this case of a perfect square. This time, the area of that square is 1 centimeter squared. It's 1 centimeter this way and 1 centimeter this way. When you go 1 by 1, that gives you an area of 1 centimeter squared. So how does that apply to this example? That means you would need 49 perfect squares, each of them with an area of 1 to cover this space. Lastly, I just realized this, I should speak about this. You'll notice that in the last two examples, I put a squared. Whenever you write down formula, you must put an exponent of 2 or squared. That's how you acknowledge that you are calculating the area. You must put the squared right there. And finally, as you can tell, the formulas for area of a rectangle, area of a square, very easy calculations. We go over to the next page here. Now we're looking at area of a triangle. And I really believe this is something you've come across before. I would recommend, if you don't mind, I tend to like this formula, but I'm even going to rewrite that in a different way. So please feel free to add this to your formula sheet. I go like this. I go area equals base times height divided by 2. If you look at the example we are given, your base is 6 centimeters. That's your base. And the height is 9 centimeters. Please be aware that the height value has to go all the way from the bottom all the way to the top. I have seen some trick questions where they might say, oh, this side right here is 12 centimeters. Well, quite often what people do is they say that's their height value. No, the height has to touch the bottom of the triangle and reach all the way up to the top spot. So I'll just get rid of that 12, not to confuse us. So you go area equals base times height divided by 2. Now you're going to fill in your numerical values. So your base is 6 centimeters multiplied by your height of 9 centimeters divided by 2. A piece of advice, you'll notice here on top that we have multiplication. If you don't type it in properly, sometimes your calculator will give you the wrong answer. You need to go, as kind of a method of best practice, 6 times 9 and hit the enter or equal button on your calculator. That should spit out 54. Then divide that by 2, and that's going to give you 27. Please remember to put the unit, which is centimeters, and because this is area, you must put squared. That's your final answer. Again, please make sure that you are getting the 54. Quite often, some calculators don't follow the same order of operations properly. Anyway, give it a try and please make sure that you get 27 with this example. Here's just some more examples that we could certainly work out. I'll do them fairly quickly. We'll call this triangle 1. So I would go area equals base times height divided by 2. Area equals, so it's going to be 4 centimeters by 5 centimeters divided by 2. And if that follows along perfectly, you should get an answer of 10 centimeters squared. Please make sure you get the 10, and please make sure you add your units of centimeters and your exponent of 2. Now, you have triangle 2 right here, okay? You're going to have to figure this, this out. You're going to go area equals base times height divided by 2. and you're going to follow the same procedure. You only have two values here, 9 inches times 5 inches divided by 2, so on and so forth. You can see how the procedure is becoming very repetitive. Now we're going to move on to the area of the circle. Now, again, I don't find the formula to be all that difficult. I don't think you'll have any problems with it. But you need to kind of think back to our lesson on circumference. You need to remind yourself, what is radius? What is diameter? And before I teach anything here, please remember, radius is halfway across a circle and diameter is the entire way across a circle. So why am I telling you that? That is because of the formula for area of a circle. And it is area equals pi times radius squared. Now, again, you see it's difficult. I'm not right there in front of you, so I'm not exactly sure which calculator you're using and how you're typing it in, but I will give you my best guess, my best idea. What I suggest is, so you have your blank formula, area equals. Now, your calculator may have a pi button. Feel free to use the pi button. If by chance it doesn't, you could use 3.14, but it would be best practice to use the pi button, and most scientific calculators have that. So does even, let's say you're using a smartphone. So you want to put down the pi button, and your calculator knows that value, and you're going to multiply that by your radius squared. So you would put in 6 squared. And hopefully on your calculator you have a squared button. If you don't, please speak with your teacher and that person can help you find it. What you want to get here is a final answer of 113.10 centimeters squared. Let's not make a big deal about rounding, but my point is, please do this example calculation and please make sure you get this answer of 113.10 give or take, because that means you know where to find the right buttons on your calculator. If not, just please run to a math teacher near you and that person will show you how to correctly type this in. If we jump down to another example, the reason this is here is because you'll see in this second one, they've given you diameter. And the problem is the formula is pi radius squared. So you cannot put in this 18 value. So you are going to have to recognize that radius is half of diameter. So 18 inches is diameter, which means that 9 inches is your radius. And please, again, practice with the calculator you have, and please make sure you get an answer really close to 254.47 inches squared. I want to reiterate that it is not essential for you to memorize these formulas. It's just essential that you know how to use them. The formulas will be given to you on your data or formula sheet. We are not here to test your memory. If we move on to the next page, I don't want to go over these too much. I just would like to bring to your attention that quite often you will need to switch units, maybe from inches to centimeters or meters to feet or what have you. And it is crucial to change the unit before you calculate the area. So if you look at example 1 here, and I'm not going to do the full thing, but you have a floor, and it must be a rectangle, and it is 4.4 meters by 3.8 meters. Okay, well, you have your formula, area equals length times width. But the question says, what is the area in square inches? Therefore, you're going to have your data or formula sheet in front of you, and as we talked about earlier, you are going to have to change your units from meters into inches. And once that is in place, then you can go ahead and find your area in the required unit. Now, I have gone over this before in how to change linear measurements. So in previous lessons, which you can feel free to go back and look at, I have covered how to go between, let's say, metric and imperial measurements. Nonetheless, I think the area is the easy part in this question, but perhaps you might need a review on how to convert units. Anyway, I'm going to move on and let you guys have some practice here. And please make sure you are comfortable with how to calculate area.